on the 45th floor of the most imposing building on Park Avenue in New York City. The morning sun illuminated the boardroom of Horizon Enterprises, the country's largest technology and innovation conglomerate. The executives awaited tensely, adjusting ties and checking data on their tablets one last time. The clock showed 9:28 a.m. She would arrive in 2 minutes, always punctual, never early, never late. The glass doors slid open with a soft hiss. Victoria Montclair, 34, billionaire CEO and founder of Horizon, entered the room with firm, precise steps. Her heels echoed like judgments on the marble floor. She wore a perfectly tailored navy blue suit, her black hair pulled back in an impeccable bun. Dark brown eyes analyzed every detail, every flaw. "Good morning," she said dryly, as everyone stood, in a conditioned reflex of respect and fear. "Quarterly reports." It wasn't a question, it was an order. Richard Paxton, the financial director, hurried to project the graphs onto the big screen. "We had 3.8% growth this quarter, Dr. Montclair. We exceeded expectations by—" 3.8%? Victoria interrupted, her cold voice cutting through the air like a razor. "The target was 4.5%. What happened to the other 0.7%, Richard? Did they evaporate?" The man swallowed hard, his pale face contrasting with his red tie. "The market experienced an unexpected downturn due to the currency crisis. But currency crisis? Interesting how Tech Global managed to grow 5.2% facing that same crisis." Victoria threw a folder onto the table. "Perhaps I should hire their analysts, or perhaps—" She paused, looking directly into Richard's eyes. "You should stop using excuses to hide your incompetence." The silence in the room was so dense it could be cut. No one dared even breathe deeply. Victoria had not amassed her $3.2 billion fortune by being complacent. She hadn't reached the top of the lists of the country's most influential entrepreneurs by accepting justifications. And she certainly didn't keep Horizon as a market leader by tolerating failures. "Caroline," she addressed the marketing director, a blonde woman who immediately straightened her posture. "Explain to me why the Horizon Health app launch only had 800,000 downloads in the first week when we projected 1.2 million. "We're focusing on user quality, not quantity, Dr. Montclair," Caroline replied, trying to maintain her composure. "The feedback has been exceptional, with an average rating of 4.8 stars and numbers, Caroline. Don't give me that. Quality over quantity talk." Victoria flipped through a report in front of her. "You know what I see here? I see a marketing campaign that cost $12 million and delivered mediocre results." It was then that Victoria noticed, out of the corner of her eye, a discreet movement at the back of the room. A middle-aged man wearing a grey uniform with the Horizon logo was silently cleaning the window panes. There was something about the way he worked, methodical, focused, almost invisible, that deeply irritated Victoria. "You there," she pointed abruptly, making the man turn around. "Is there some emergency that justifies cleaning these windows during my meeting?" The man, with his graying hair at the temples and tranquil brown eyes, replied politely, "Pardon me, doctor. I received orders to clean all meeting rooms before 10 a.m. "And you couldn't wait another—" Victoria consulted her luxury watch. 20 minutes for my meeting to finish. Or can your brain not process a simple schedule change?" Some executives looked away, embarrassed by the treatment of the employee. Others maintained neutral expressions, knowing that any display of empathy could draw Victoria's wrath upon themselves. "I can come back later, no." "Problem," the man said, beginning to gather his cleaning supplies. "No, since you're here, just finish it," Victoria ordered disdainfully. "But at least look useful. That window still has marks." The comment stung like a slap. The man paused for an instant, his face reflected in the glass he was cleaning. Something in his eyes changed. It wasn't anger, it was a kind of resignation mixed with dignity. Meanwhile, Victoria continued her massacre. "Now, Maurice, explain to me why we lost 3 senior developers to the competition this month." The HR director adjusted his glasses nervously. "They received substantially better offers, Dr. Montclair. We're in a competitive market and better offers." Victoria laughed, a humorless sound. Our company pays the best salaries in the industry. If they left, it's because you and your team failed to keep them motivated. Perhaps you should be the next to look for better offers, don't you think? The meeting proceeded like a firing squad, with Victoria firing relentless criticisms at each presentation. The numbers were always insufficient, the strategies always flawed, the ideas always mediocre. "This is pathetic," she declared after Renee, the innovation director's presentation. "You call this an expansion plan? It looks like something a first-semester intern would do on the eve of a deadline." Renee, a competent woman with 15 years of career experience and a master's degree from abroad, felt her eyes sting. "I can redo the analysis with your considerations, Doctor." "Do that, and also consider updating your resume because I'm starting to question your usefulness to this company." It was at that moment that the cleaner, still silently working on the windows, accidentally dropped a cloth on the floor. The small noise was enough for Victoria to turn her frustration back to him. "Seriously? You can't even clean windows properly?" The man bent down to pick up the cloth, and as he stood up, something fell from his shirt pocket, a small keychain with silver wings. He quickly picked it up and put it away, but not before Victoria noticed. "What is that? Does your uniform include personal trinkets now?" she questioned with disdain. "It's just a keychain, Doctor," he replied calmly. "A keepsake? Well, keep your keepsakes for off hours. You're being paid to clean, not to display your sentimental trinkets." Something changed in the man's expression. It wasn't a sudden movement, nor an evident alteration in his face. It was something deeper, like a decision made after long reflection. He looked directly at Victoria for the first time. "With all due respect, Doctor," he said in a calm but firm voice, "perhaps you should start by finding your heart." The room froze. It was as if someone had sucked all the oxygen out of the atmosphere. No one in the entire history of Horizon Enterprises had ever confronted Victoria Montclair in this way. "What did you say?" Victoria asked, her voice dangerously low. "I said perhaps you should find your heart," the man repeated without altering his serene tone. "I can see that you hurt others just to hide the fact that you're hurting inside." The executives present exchanged nervous glances. Some even held their breath. What would follow would undoubtedly be an explosion of fury like they had never seen. Victoria Montclair's face assumed a morbid pallor, contrasting with the flush rising up her neck. Her eyes, usually calculating, now burned with uncontrollable fury. "How dare you?" she asked, her voice trembling. "What is your name?" "Augustus. Augustus Merrill," the man replied without averting his gaze. "Very well, Augustus Merrill. You are fired. Immediately. Collect your things and leave my company before I call security." Augustus nodded slightly, as if he had expected this reaction. Calmly, he began to gather his cleaning products. "You cannot hurt me more than life has already hurt me," he said, still with that disconcerting serenity. "But you are destroying your team. True strength isn't in destroying people, but in rebuilding them." As he said this, Augustus briefly looked at the executives around the table, their faces marked by chronic stress and constant fear. Then he walked towards the door with dignity. It was then that something unprecedented happened. Raphael Davies, a young data analyst who was in the meeting only to present some graphs, began to applaud. The sound of his hands echoed in the silent room, soon followed by Renee, the innovation director who had just been humiliated. Within seconds, several executives joined the applause, some discreetly, others with evident emotion. Victoria remained static, incredulous at the insurgency. "If anyone else applauds, they can accompany Augustus to the door," she threatened, but her voice no longer carried the same authority. Something had irreversibly changed in that room. As Augustus left, Vanessa Lim from the IT team kept, her eyes fixed on her laptop, not out of fear of Victoria, but because she was discreetly extracting the security camera footage of the meeting. In less than 15 minutes, the video was already circulating in the company's internal messaging groups. Augustus Merrill went down to the changing room in the basement, swapped his uniform for civilian clothes, and put his belongings into a worn backpack. As he left the Horizon Enterprises headquarters building, he showed no anger or sadness. There was only a slight concern in his eyes. How am I going to explain this to Clara? He murmured, to himself, as he walked to the bus stop. Clara Merrill, his 10-year-old daughter, was the reason for everything in his life. After Olivia, his wife, was diagnosed with cancer 3 years ago, Augustus's life had completely transformed. He left his promising career as an engineer in the Air Force to care for her full-time. And when Olivia passed away, only he, Clara, and a mountain of medical debts remained. The job at Horizon wasn't ideal, but it offered flexible hours that allowed Augustus to be present when Clara returned from school. It also provided a health plan that covered the girl's asthma medication. Now all of that was lost. The bus continued along Park Avenue, heading down towards a diverse neighborhood in Queens, where Augustus lived with his daughter in a small apartment. Through the window, he observed the bustling city, so indifferent to the small personal tragedies that occurred every moment. Uncle John might help me find something temporary, he thought, referring to his older brother who worked as a janitor at a private school in the Upper East Side. It wouldn't be ideal, but at least it would ensure the basics, while he looked for something else. That same afternoon, as Augustus prepared pasta with tomato sauce, Clara's favorite dish, the phone rang. It was Vanessa Lim from IT. "Mr. Merrill, you won't believe what's happening," she said, her voice filled with excitement. "The video of your confrontation with Dr. Victoria leaked. It's all over the internet. It already has over 200,000 views." Augustus frowned, confused. "What video?" "From the meeting room security camera, when you said those things to her. People are calling you a silent hero, and the hashtag Zamra's Find Your Heart is trending right now." "My God," was all Augustus could say, feeling a mix of concern and disbelief. "This will complicate my search for a new job." "On the contrary," exclaimed Vanessa, "companies are already contacting HR asking about you. Journalists want interviews. You've become a symbol against corporate toxicity." Before Augustus could fully process what was happening, the doorbell rang. It was Clara, returning from school with Mrs. Teresa, a neighbor who picked her up on days Augustus worked late. "Dad, what's going on? Teacher Marcia showed me a video of you on the internet," Clara said as soon as she entered, her green eyes, identical to her mother's, sparkling with curiosity. "Everyone's saying you're a hero." Augustus hung up the phone after thanking Vanessa for the information and knelt down to his daughter's height. "I'm no hero, Clara. I just told some truths to someone who isn't used to hearing them." "Did you fight with someone, Dad?" "Not exactly. Sometimes we need to stand up for what we believe in, even when it's hard. Remember what Mom always used to say?" Clara smiled, reciting the words she knew by heart. Courage isn't the absence of fear, but doing what's right despite it. Augustus hugged his daughter, feeling a lump in his throat. "Exactly. Now shall we have dinner? I made your favorite pasta." Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Victoria Montclair watched the viral video on her laptop in horror. Sitting alone in her triplex penthouse in Tribeca, overlooking Central Park, she watched her career crumbling before her eyes. The recording clearly showed her tyrannical behavior with employees and, worse, perfectly captured the moment when Augustus, with calm and dignity, exposed her vulnerability before everyone. In the online comments, it was unanimous. He was the hero, she the villain. The phone rang. It was Alexander Vance, chairman of Horizon's board of directors. "Victoria, we're calling an extraordinary board meeting for tomorrow at 8 a.m., he announced, his grave tone highlighting the seriousness of the situation. "This is out of control. We've already lost 2 important contracts and 3 sponsors are threatening to terminate partnerships. Alexander, this will pass. It's just a social media storm," Victoria tried to argue, though without her usual conviction. "It's not just on social media. The Wall Street Journal is preparing a cover story on toxic leadership, with you as a case study. CNN wants to do a special on workplace harassment. And there's more. They discovered that this Augustus Merrill isn't just a simple cleaner." Victoria felt a chill. "What do you mean?" "The man was an engineering captain in the Air Force, specializing in aerospace systems. He has a master's degree from MIT. He left his career to care for his sick wife and daughter. After his wife passed away, he dedicated himself entirely to raising the girl, who has chronic asthma. It's practically a Hollywood-level story of overcoming adversity, and you just played the villain. The call ended with the board's unanimous decision. Victoria was to take paid leave while the crisis was managed. In other words, she was temporarily removed from the company she herself had founded. For hours, Victoria remained paralyzed, staring out the window at the city lights coming on as night fell. How had that man, a simple cleaner, managed to bring down her entire empire in a matter of hours? How had he dared to expose her vulnerabilities before everyone? And worst of all, how had he so easily seen through the armor she had taken years to build? I can see that you hurt others just to hide the fact that you're hurting inside. Augustus's words echoed in her mind. They were disturbing precisely because they contained a truth she refused to admit. Something in that simple man had awakened feelings Victoria had kept buried for years. The sensation was akin to having a mirror held up to her soul, revealing an image she didn't want to see. Outside her luxury apartment, the city pulsed, indifferent to the small drama unfolding. But within those elegant walls, something was beginning to crack in the fortress Victoria Montclair had built around herself. The next morning, headlines virtually plastered every news portal in the country. Billionaire Victoria Montclair, the Ice Queen, confronted by cleaner as video goes viral. Former Air Force officer working as cleaner confronts tyrannical CEO. Find your heart. Workplace harassment on video. Horizon Enterprises case exposes dark side of success. Augustus woke with a start to the insistent ringing of the doorbell. When he opened the door, he was met by a young reporter accompanied by a cameraman. "Mr. Merrill, we're from Good Morning America. Can we ask you a few questions about the incident at Horizon Enterprises?" Augustus politely closed the door, refusing the interview. Minutes later, the phone rang. It was the building superintendent informing him that there were a dozen journalists in the lobby, all wanting to speak with him. Then, a call from Clara's school. Reporters were trying to enter the school to photograph the girl. "This is madness," Augustus murmured, feeling the weight of the situation. He didn't want exposure. He didn't need it. All he wanted was to find a new job and continue his simple life with his daughter. He decided to call his older brother, John Merrill, who promptly offered refuge at his house in the quiet Riverdale, the Bronx neighborhood. "Come here with Clara until this storm passes," John said. "My house is big, you'll be comfortable, and the reporters won't bother you here." As he packed a small bag with essentials for himself and Clara, Augustus received a surprising call. It was Regina Saunders, director of the Guiding Star Institute, a prestigious private school where his daughter dreamed of studying, but whose tuition fees were far beyond his means. "Mr. Merrill, we are impressed by your story. We would like to offer a full scholarship for your daughter Clara, and additionally a job for you on our maintenance team, with flexible hours, compatible with her school routine. We would be honored to have you both in our institution." Augustus felt emotion overwhelm his voice. I don't know what to say, Ms. Saunders." "Say yes," the director replied kindly. "We need examples like yours in our school community." At that very moment, in the luxurious offices of Horizon Enterprises, the board of directors held its emergency meeting. The atmosphere was tense, with stock market decline numbers being updated every minute. "The company's shares have already fallen 8.7% since yesterday," informed Mark Taylor, the legal director. "Our reputation is seriously compromised. We have to manage this crisis immediately." Alexander Vance, the chairman of the board, nodded gravely. "Victoria's removal is just the first step. We need a comprehensive public relations strategy, perhaps a campaign on workplace well-being, some social initiative that demonstrates our commitment to—" "Excuse me," interrupted Renee, the innovation director, who had been humiliated by Victoria in the famous meeting. "I think we're missing the main point here. This isn't about creating a facade to hide the problem. The problem is real and deep. Our organizational culture is toxic, and all of us allowed it to reach this point." A heavy silence followed her words. The uncomfortable truth hung in the air. Everyone there at some point had remained silent in the face of Victoria's abusive behavior, out of fear, convenience, or simple self-preservation. "Renee is right," agreed Caroline, the marketing director. "We are reaping what we sowed. For years we tolerated and even encouraged Victoria's tyrannical leadership style because it brought results. Now the bill has come due. Meanwhile, isolated in her penthouse, Victoria watched the freefall of her reputation. Online comments were merciless, dissecting every aspect of her personality and management style. Former employees emerged with new stories about her abusive behavior. An online petition demanding her permanent resignation as CEO of Horizon already had over 500,000 signatures. For the first time in her adult life, Victoria felt completely defenseless. Not all her money, power, or influence could protect her from the relentless judgment of public opinion. It was then, while scrolling through the comments of the viral video, that something caught her attention. It was an old photo, posted by a former Royal Air Force colleague of Augustus Miller. In the image, Augustus wore his military uniform alongside other officers. Among them was a man Victoria recognized. Immediately, though she hadn't seen him in almost 20 years, Colonel Robert Anderson. Victoria's heart raced. Robert Anderson had been the best friend of her father, Captain Edward Montgomery, a Royal Air Force fighter pilot. When her father died in a training plane crash, Victoria was only 16. It was Colonel Anderson who brought the news to her family. It was he who gave Victoria the keychain with silver wings, the emblem of military aviation that her father always carried as a good luck charm. The same model of keychain she had seen fall from Augustus Miller's pocket during the fateful meeting. "It can't be a coincidence," Victoria murmured, feeling a shiver run down her spine. Impulsively, she picked up the phone and called Colonel Anderson, now retired, with whom she had maintained sporadic contact over the years. "Colonel, I need to know about Augustus Miller. Did he serve with you?" After a moment of silence, the retired officer's grave voice came from the other end of the line. "Victoria, so it was with you that Augustus had that confrontation. It's a small world indeed. Do you know him well?" "We served together for almost 10 years. Augustus was one of our best engineers, truly brilliant. He could have reached higher ranks, but he gave it all up to care for his sick wife, a decision few would have the courage to make." Victoria felt something strange in her chest, an emotion she couldn't name. "Colonel, did he know my father?" Another moment of silence, longer this time. "Yes, Victoria. In fact, Augustus was one of the last to speak with Edward before the accident. They were working together on the development of a new navigation system. Augustus never forgave himself for not detecting the flaw that, well, you know." The words hit Victoria like a physical blow. The man she had humiliated and fired was not just any employee. He was someone connected to the most traumatic event of her life, someone who carried a similar guilt to her own. "I need to find him," Victoria said suddenly. "Are you sure?" "After what happened, I am. It's important." After hanging up the phone, Victoria remained motionless for several minutes, processing the incredible web of coincidences, or was it destiny, that had connected her life to Augustus Miller's. How had she not noticed before? How? Had she not seen the Royal Air Force keychain, a symbol she herself kept as a sacred relic? Determined, she began to research the former employee intensely. She discovered that after being fired, Augustus had accepted a job at the Guiding Star Academy, where his daughter would also study. The school was located in the Kensington neighborhood, less than 20 minutes from her apartment. Meanwhile, at John Miller's house, Augustus watched, incredulous, the repercussions of the video. His phone wouldn't stop ringing with job offers, interview requests, and even proposals for books and motivational speeches. "You've become a celebrity overnight." "Man," John commented, shaking his head in amazement. "All this for telling the truth to an arrogant rich woman." "It wasn't my intention to cause all this," Augustus replied, genuinely disturbed by the scale the incident had taken. "I just wanted to maintain my dignity." Clara, who was playing with her cousins in the backyard, ran into the living room with a tablet in her hands. "Dad, look! People are making memes with you," she exclaimed, showing montages where Augustus's phrases appeared in comical situations. "My friends at school think you're super cool." Augustus smiled, but his eyes remained worried. "I hope this passes soon, honey. We're not people for the spotlight." That night, while Clara slept, Augustus sat on the porch of his brother's house. The starry sky over London, rarely visible due to light pollution, was exceptionally clear in that leafy area of the city. Augustus remembered the nights he used to watch the stars with Olivia, his wife, making plans for the future. "What would you think of all this, my love?" he whispered, as if she could hear him. "Your quiet husband becoming national news." In his pocket the keychain with silver wings, a gift. From his former commander, Colonel Anderson, after the tragedy that claimed Captain Montgomery, weighed as a constant reminder of how life could change in an instant. What Augustus didn't know was that the next day his life would change again when Victoria Montgomery finally found him, bringing with her a past that connected them both in ways neither could imagine. The morning was exceptionally clear when Victoria Montgomery parked her silver Porsche Taycan at the entrance of the Guiding Star Academy. She had opted for a discreet look, dark jeans, a basic white t-shirt and a simple blazer. Her hair, normally pulled back in an impeccable bun, was loose, falling in natural waves over her shoulders. No elaborate makeup or flashy jewelry. She wanted to go unnoticed, something unprecedented for someone who always made a point of being the center of attention. She observed the movement at the school entrance, parents saying goodbye to their children, teachers greeting students with warm smiles, the peaceful routine of a well-managed educational institution. Very different from the tense and competitive environment of Horizon Enterprises. Taking a deep breath, Victoria picked up a small box from the passenger seat. Inside it, the keychain with silver wings that Augustus had dropped in the meeting room, and got out of the car. She needed to do this. She needed to understand. At the school reception, she was greeted by a smiling young attendant. "Good morning. How can I help you?" "I'm looking for Augustus Miller. He recently started working here." The receptionist's expression subtly changed. "Ah, Mr. Miller. Yes, he's been with us since yesterday. Do you have an appointment?" "No, but it's an urgent personal matter. Could you please inform him that Victoria Montgomery would like to speak with him?" The young woman's eyes widened in recognition. Clearly she knew who Victoria was and what had happened between her and Augustus. For a moment she seemed to hesitate. "I'll check if he can receive you," she finally said, picking up the phone. While waiting, Victoria observed the colorful murals on the walls, student artwork, photos of school activities, posters about educational projects, a world so distant from hers, so full of life and spontaneity. After a few minutes, the receptionist returned. "Mr. Miller will see you. He's in the inner garden preparing an area for the outdoor science class. May I take you there?" Following the employee through the corridors, Victoria felt strangely vulnerable. Here she wasn't the powerful CEO everyone feared. She was just a visitor, a stranger in territory that didn't belong to her. The inner garden was a spacious and well-maintained area, with diverse plant beds, a small vegetable garden, and strategically placed wooden benches. In the center, Augustus, wearing a green institute uniform, was arranging simple meteorological instruments, a rain gauge, a weather vane, a thermometer, on a table. Upon seeing her, he froze for an instant. Then, with the same calm he had shown during their confrontation, he approached. "Ms. Montgomery, I confess I wasn't expecting your visit." "Mr. Miller, thank you for receiving me, especially after everything." An awkward silence followed, broken only by a robin's song in a nearby tree. "Would you like to sit?" Augustus offered, indicating one of the benches. Victoria nodded, and both sat side by side, looking at the small water fountain that decorated the center of the garden. "Why are you here, Miss Montgomery?" Victoria took the small box from her pocket and extended it to Augustus. "You dropped this that day. I thought you'd like to have it back." Augustus opened the box and his eyes softened upon seeing the keychain with silver wings. "Thank you. This means a lot to me." "I know," Victoria said, surprising him. "It's a Royal Air Force emblem. My father had one just like it." Augustus frowned, confused. "Your father?" "Captain Edward Montgomery," Victoria replied, carefully observing Augustus's reaction. "A fighter pilot. He was in an accident during training almost 20 years ago." Augustus's face paled and his hands holding the keychain began to tremble slightly. "Edward Montgomery, was he your father?" Victoria nodded, feeling emotion form a knot in her throat. "Colonel Anderson told me you worked together, that you were one of the last to speak with him before the accident." Augustus closed his eyes for a moment, as if trying to suppress painful memories. When he reopened them, they were moist. "I helped develop the navigation system for that plane. I should have detected the flaw. I should have—" "It wasn't your fault," Victoria interrupted, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "I spent many years looking for someone to blame. The Air Force, the engineers, even my own father for being a pilot, but in the end it was just a terrible accident. How did you discover the connection between us? I saw a photo of you with Colonel Anderson and other officers. I recognized his face immediately. He was like an uncle to me after my father passed away." Augustus nodded, understanding. "It really is a small world." "Maybe it's not a coincidence," Victoria said, her voice almost a whisper. Maybe I needed to hear what you said in that room." At that moment, a group of children ran past through the garden, laughing and chatting animatedly. Among them, a girl, with curly hair and bright green eyes, stopped upon seeing Augustus. "Dad, Teacher Marcia said we're going to use the thermometers you prepared in class today," Clara exclaimed, before noticing Victoria's presence. "Hi, I'm Clara. Are you a friend of my dad's?" Victoria smiled, genuinely charmed by the child's spontaneity. "We're just getting to know each other. I'm Victoria." Clara's eyes widened. "Victoria Montgomery, the lady from the video." Augustus quickly intervened. "Clara, why don't you go with your friends? Class will start soon." The girl nodded, looking curiously at Victoria one last time before running off to catch up with her classmates. "She's adorable," Victoria commented. "She has your eyes." "Actually, she has her mother's eyes," Augustus corrected with a gentle smile. "Olivia was the kindest person I've ever known. Even in the worst moments of her illness, she never lost the ability to see beauty in small things." Victoria felt something strange in her chest, a mix of admiration and envy for the way Augustus spoke of his deceased wife. There was so much love in his voice, such authentic devotion. "How do you do it?" she asked suddenly. "Do what?" "Remain human after losing your wife, having to abandon your career, facing financial difficulties. How did you not become bitter, resentful of the world?" Augustus reflected for a moment before answering. "I didn't lose everything. I still have Clara, and as for remaining human, I confess I was also angry with the world when Olivia left. There were days when the anger was so intense I could barely breathe." "What changed then?" "I realized I had a choice. I could let bitterness consume me, or actively choose to be kind, to be the person Olivia loved, the person Clara deserves as a father." Augustus paused, looking directly into Victoria's eyes. "I choose every day, Ms. Montgomery. Sometimes it's easy, other times it's the hardest thing in the world, but it's always a choice." Victoria felt tears forming in her eyes, something that hadn't happened in years. "My father used to say something similar. He said that being a pilot wasn't just about technical skill, but about character. 'Take care of your crew,' he always repeated. I believe he would be disappointed with the person I've become." "Or perhaps," Augustus said gently, "he would be proud of the strong, successful woman you are and would only wish that you didn't have to be so hard on yourself and others." Victoria couldn't hold back the tears. There in that school garden, away from the gaze of her executives and the pressure of her company, she allowed herself to cry for the first time since her father's funeral. "After he left, I promised myself I would be strong, that no one would ever see me weak or vulnerable," she confessed between sobs. "I built my company and my fortune on relentless determination. I thought it would protect me from pain, but it only made me empty." Augustus extended his hand and, hesitant, touched Victoria's shoulder in a gesture of comfort. "It's never too late to start over." He then picked up the keychain with silver wings and offered it back to Victoria. "Keep this as a reminder to lift people up, starting by saving yourself." Victoria looked at the shining object in her hands, feeling its symbolic weight. Why are you being kind to me after what I did to you? Augustus smiled, a smile that held hard-won wisdom. When Olivia was in her final days, she made me promise something. She said, "Don't let this be the end of your kindness. Let it be the beginning of someone else's hope." Perhaps you are that person now. At that moment, the school bell rang, announcing the start of classes. Augustus stood up. "I need to finish preparing the materials for the science class." Victoria also stood up, wiping her tears. "Of course, Thank you for receiving me, Mr. Miller." "Augustus," he corrected with a smile. "You can call me Augustus. And you can call me Victoria." As she left the Guiding Star Academy, Victoria felt strangely light, as if a burden she had carried for 2 decades was finally beginning to dissipate. On the passenger seat of her luxurious car, the keychain with silver wings shone under the midday sun, no longer a symbol of loss, but a reminder of possibility. In her apartment, she looked at the open laptop on the coffee table, where dozens of unread emails from Horizon's board of directors and legal department awaited her attention. Instead of opening them, Victoria did something she hadn't done in years. She went to her closet and, from the back of a locked drawer, retrieved an intricately carved wooden box. Inside, she kept the few remaining objects from her father: some photos, his wedding ring, newspaper clippings about his missions, and carefully preserved the letter he had written to be given to her should anything happen to him. Victoria reread the handwritten words, some parts blurred by long-shed tears. "Dearest Victoria, if you are reading this, it means I can no longer be physically by your side, but I want you to know that I will always be present in the wind that blows, in the stars that shine, and most importantly, in your heart. Flying taught me many lessons, but the most important one is that we are never truly alone in the sky. We depend on each other, on fellow pilots, on air traffic controllers, on mechanics, on an entire invisible team that keeps us safe. Life is like that too, honey. No matter how high you fly, never forget who helped you get there. And when you are in command, always remember, take care of your crew. Lift them up with you. Don't leave them behind. Your mother and I raised you to be strong, but true strength isn't about never falling. It's about always getting up and helping others get up too. Fly high, my little one, but never so high that you can't see the ground and the people on it. With all my love, Dad." Upon finishing reading, Victoria knew what she needed to do. She picked up the phone and made 2 calls, one to Alexander Vance, chairman of Horizon's board, and another to her personal lawyer. The time had come to rewrite her story, no longer as the Ice Queen, but as the leader her father always knew she could be. In the days that followed her encounter with Augustus, Victoria Montgomery entered a period of deep reflection. For the first time in years, she cancelled all her appointments, turned off her cell phone, and isolated herself in her penthouse. It was no longer the proud isolation of before, but a conscious retreat to reorganize her thoughts and priorities. In her living room, she spread dozens of sheets of paper across the floor. On each, she wrote names: employees she had humiliated, colleagues she had alienated, relationships she had sacrificed on the altar of her ambition. It was a long and painful list to examine. "How did I become this?" she asked herself, observing the constellation of hurts she had left in her wake. On the wall, she affixed a large sheet where she wrote, "Reconstruction Plan." It wasn't just about saving her public image or her company. It was a project to rebuild her own humanity. Meanwhile, at Horizon Enterprises headquarters, the atmosphere was one of apprehension and speculation. In Victoria's absence, the board of directors had appointed Alexander Vance as interim CEO. Under his leadership, emergency crisis management initiatives were implemented, organizational culture consultants were hired, an anonymous channel for harassment complaints was created, and workshops on human-centered leadership became mandatory for all managers. But for many employees, these measures seemed superficial, band-aids on a deep wound that would only heal with structural changes. "It's all for show," commented Renata during a lunch with Caroline and other directors. "Procedures change, but the culture remains the same." "I don't know," Caroline replied thoughtfully. "Perhaps we're being too cynical. I saw Alexander cancelling meetings to attend his daughter's school presentation yesterday. That would never have happened in Victoria's era. Speaking of her, has anyone heard anything? She literally vanished off the map. The directors exchanged glances. No one had been able to contact Victoria in over 2 weeks, something unprecedented for someone who used to respond to emails at 3 in the morning. In the 3rd week of her absence, Victoria finally reappeared, not at the company, but at the Guiding Star Academy. She had scheduled a formal meeting with Regina Stone, the director, and asked that Augustus also be present. When she entered the director's office, Victoria looked different, not just because of her more casual look, simple tailored trousers and an unadorned navy blue blouse, but because of a less tangible quality in her presence. The aura of intimidation had been replaced by something more approachable, more human. "Thank you for having me," she said, sitting down opposite Regina and Augustus. "I have a proposal I'd like to discuss with you." Regina, an elegant woman in her 50s, nodded with curiosity. "We're listening, Dr. Miller." "Please call me Victoria." She opened a folder she had brought with her. "In recent days, I've reflected a lot on purpose and legacy, on the kind of impact I want to leave on the world, and I realized that my company, despite all its financial success, failed in the most fundamental aspect, caring for people." Augustus watched Victoria intently, noticing the sincerity in her voice, something he had never perceived in her before. "I'm here because I want to create a foundation," she continued. "An organization dedicated to supporting families in situations similar to yours, Augustus. Single parents facing financial challenges while caring for children with special health needs. And I would like the Guiding Star Institute to be our first partner in this initiative." Regina leaned forward, intrigued. "What kind of partnership do you envision?" "To start, I would like to fund full scholarships for 20 children in my situation similar to Clara's. Not just tuition, but school supplies, uniforms, food and transportation. Additionally, a fund for supplementary medical assistance covering treatments and medications not available through the public system." Augustus frowned, surprised by the breadth of the proposal. That would require a considerable investment. "I am prepared to initially allocate £50 million from my personal assets to this foundation," Victoria declared, making Regina almost choke on the coffee she was drinking. "And this is just the beginning." The director set down her cup, visibly impressed. "Dr. Miller, Victoria, this is extraordinarily generous, but I must ask, why? Our institution, there are larger, more well-known schools. Because you have already demonstrated commitment to these values by welcoming Augustus and Clara," Victoria replied, "and because I believe in the synchronicity of the encounters we have in life. I am here for a reason." She then turned to Augustus, her gaze more vulnerable than he had ever seen it. "And there's something else. I would like to invite you, Augustus, to lead this foundation." The astonishment on his face was evident. "Me, but I have no experience with foundation administration, or you have exactly what this foundation needs: integrity, empathy, and personal experience with the challenges we aim to address. Your technical skills as an engineer will be valuable for management, and I can provide all the necessary additional training. Besides," Victoria hesitated briefly, "I trust you." Those 3 words, "I trust you," coming from someone known for trusting no one, held extraordinary weight in the room. Augustus remained silent for a few moments, processing the proposal. "I would need flexibility to continue being present in Clara's daily routine. Of course, you will set your own hours. The foundation will be structured around the family values we want to promote. It would be contradictory to demand that its director neglect their own family." Regina observed the interaction with growing admiration. The transformation of the Ice Queen into a person genuinely concerned with the welfare of others seemed almost miraculous. "May I think about it?" Augustus finally asked. "Naturally," Victoria replied. "I don't expect an immediate answer for something so significant." That night, at his brother John's house where he was still staying, Augustus shared the surprising proposal with John and Clara. "An entire foundation? And she wants you to be the boss?" John exclaimed, incredulous. "The same woman who fired you in front of everyone a few weeks ago." "People can change, John," Augustus replied thoughtfully. "I believe she is genuinely remorseful and wants to do things differently." "But do you trust her, Dad?" Clara asked, ever perceptive. "The lady at school said she was very mean to her employees." Augustus considered his daughter's question seriously. "I think she's trying not to be that person anymore, little Clara. And sometimes when someone is really trying to change, they deserve a chance. Like when I broke Grandma's vase and promised I'd be more careful, and you still let me hold your special watch." Augustus smiled, touched by the simple but profound comparison. Exactly like that. Meanwhile, Victoria faced another kind of challenge. She had called an extraordinary meeting with the board of directors of Horizon Enterprises to present not only her plan for the foundation, but a complete overhaul of the company's organizational culture. In the spacious boardroom where weeks earlier she had humiliated Augustus, Victoria now placed herself in a radically different position, that of someone asking for a second chance. "Ladies and gentlemen of the board," she began, looking directly at each of the 12 executives present. "Before presenting my proposal, I need to do something I should have done a long time ago. Apologize." A murmur of surprise rippled through the room. Alexander Vance, the board chairman, adjusted himself in his chair, clearly disconcerted. "For years, I led this company believing that toughness was synonymous with strength, that fear was a legitimate management tool, and that vulnerability was weakness. I was profoundly mistaken, and we all paid the price for it. I, with the emptiness I created around myself, you, enduring a toxic environment, and our employees sacrificing their mental health and well-being in the name of results." The silence in the room was absolute. No one expected such a level of self-criticism from the woman who had always presented herself as infallible. "What I propose today is not simply a strategy to manage the image crisis we face. It is a complete reinvention of who we are as an organization." For 2 hours, Victoria presented her detailed plan: changes in human resources policy, reduced working hours without salary reduction, implementation of extended parental leave for all employees, restructuring of the career plan to value soft skills such as empathy and collaboration, in addition to the creation of the foundation that would operate independently but in partnership with Horizon Enterprises. "And to demonstrate my personal commitment to this transformation," she concluded, "I am willing to participate in a formal executive coaching and therapy process with regular progress reports to be shared with the board. I know words are not enough. I need to show through consistent actions that I am truly committed to change." The board debated the proposal for hours. Some more skeptical members questioned the sincerity of the transformation, suggesting it might just be a public relations strategy. Others expressed concern about the costs of the proposed initiatives. I'm not asking for the board's approval to create the foundation," Victoria clarified. "I will do that with my personal resources. As for the other organizational changes, yes, they will require investment, but the return in terms of talent retention, productivity, and innovation will more than compensate." Ultimately, the board conditionally approved Victoria's return as CEO, with closer supervision in the first 6 months and periodic evaluations of her leadership. When the meeting ended, it was already night. Victoria remained alone in the room, looking out the same window that Augustus had cleaned on that fateful day. The city glowed. Outside, millions of lights like tiny earthly stars. Her phone rang. It was Augustus. "I accept your proposal," he said simply, "but I have one condition." "I'm listening." "I don't want this foundation to be just about money or handouts. I want it to be about transformation. The people we help today should be empowered to help others tomorrow." Victoria smiled, recognizing in Augustus's condition the same spirit that was beginning to awaken in her. "Exactly what I was thinking. When can we start planning?" "How about tomorrow? Clara has swimming lessons at 4, so I'm free until 5:30. "Tomorrow." "That too, then. And Augustus, thank you for believing in this possibility." After hanging up, Victoria realized she was holding the silver wings keychain. On impulse, she approached the window and looked up at the sky, where a few stars stubbornly shone despite the metropolis's light pollution. "I'm trying, Dad," she whispered. "I'm trying to take care of my crew now." And for the first time in a long time, she felt a genuine peace, not the absence of emotion she had confused with strength for so many years, but the tranquility of someone who finally finds their true path. 1 year later, the auditorium of the Guiding Star Institute was completely packed. Families, teachers, executives from Horizon Enterprises, and media representatives settled into chairs arranged in a semicircle. On the stage, decorated with white and blue flower arrangements, a banner displayed the logo of the Wings Foundation, the stylized outline of a pair of silver wings with a star at the center. Backstage, Victoria Miller nervously adjusted the wing-shaped brooch on her blazer. It wasn't the nervousness of someone who fears judgment, but the contained emotion of someone who knows the importance of the moment. "Everything's perfect. Stop worrying," Augustus said, approaching with a reassuring smile. He wore a simple but elegant suit, a gift from Victoria last Christmas, though he had resisted quite a bit before accepting it. "Perfect is too strong a word," she replied, returning the smile. "Let's say it's adequately imperfect." This was the new Victoria, still a perfectionist, but capable of finding beauty in imperfections, of accepting that not everything needed to be controlled. "Is Clara nervous?" she asked. "A little. But you know my daughter. Nervousness for her is like rocket fuel." They both laughed. In the past year, Clara had become a constant presence in Victoria's life, first through foundation planning meetings with Augustus, then at occasional dinners, visits to the planetarium. They discovered a shared passion for astronomy, and finally, in deep conversations where the girl, with the disconcerting wisdom of children, helped Victoria reconnect with her own childhood. "It's time," Regina, the Institute's director, announced, joining them. "We have a full house and more people watching the online stream." Victoria took a deep breath and walked onto the stage. The applause that greeted her was different from what she was used to at business conferences, warmer, more genuine. She noticed familiar faces in the audience. Alexander and other members of the Horizon Board, Renata and Caroline, now her allies in the company's cultural transformation, John Mireles and his family, Colonel Davies, and dozens of families who had benefited from the Foundation's first year of activities. "Good afternoon, everyone," she began. "I immensely appreciate your presence on this special day for the Wings Foundation, for the Guiding Star Institute, and, if you'll allow me a personal moment, for me." Victoria paused, her eyes meeting Augustus's backstage, who nodded encouragingly. "Exactly 1 year ago, we embarked on a journey to transform pain into hope, failure into learning, and indifference into human connection. The Wings Foundation was born from a crisis. Many of you know the story. Some experienced it directly. But as our motto says, it doesn't matter how you fall, it matters how you rise." In the front row, Clara smiled, proud that she had been the one to suggest that motto during one of the first planning meetings. "Over the past 12 months, we have provided full scholarships for 43 children in 8 partner educational institutions. Our supplementary medical assistance program has served 127 families. We created the Embrace Project, offering psychological support to single parents in vulnerable situations. And we launched the New Beginnings program, which has already professionally trained 86 people who needed to reinvent their careers due to personal crises." The numbers were impressive, but they were not Victoria's main focus. She knew that behind every statistic were human stories, challenges overcome, lives transformed. "But we are not here just to celebrate numbers. We are here to honor transformations, and for that, I hand the floor to the Foundation's Executive Director, the man without whom none of this would be possible, Augustus Mireles." The applause was deafening when Augustus took the stage. He, who had always valued anonymity, now faced the spotlight with the same silent dignity he had shown that day in the boardroom. "Thank you, Victoria," he said, adjusting the microphone. "When I was asked to lead this foundation, I confess I hesitated, not because I doubted the sincerity of the proposal, but because I feared I didn't have the necessary skills. I was just a former military man, a former engineer, working in maintenance to support my daughter. He looked at Clara, who responded with a thumbs-up gesture. But I learned that sometimes our biggest limitations are just mistaken perceptions about ourselves. The Wings Foundation doesn't exist just to help families with financial resources or educational opportunities. It exists to remind all of us that we can always start over. We can always choose a different path. Augustus then invited 3 foundation beneficiaries to the stage who shared their stories of overcoming adversity. A single mother who had managed to complete her university degree while caring for her son with cerebral palsy. A father who, after losing everything in a flood, had rebuilt his professional life through the New Beginnings program. A teenager who, thanks to a scholarship and medical treatments for her respiratory condition, now dreamed of becoming a doctor. When the last testimony ended, there wasn't a dry eye in the auditorium. Victoria, usually so composed, made no attempt to hide her own tears. "And now," Augustus announced, "we have a special presentation prepared by the Foundation's scholarship students." A group of children, including Clara, came onto the stage. They had prepared a choreography to a song about overcoming and hope. In the center of the group, a girl in a wheelchair led the movements with grace and determination. At the end of the presentation, Clara took the microphone, surprising even her father. "Today is a very important day," she said, with the confidence of someone born for the stage. "It's not just the Foundation's birthday. It's also a sad and happy day for my dad and for Aunt Victoria." Augustus and Victoria exchanged surprised glances. They hadn't told Clara about the date. "Today marks 3 years since my mum went to heaven and 21 years since Aunt Victoria's dad also went. So we prepared a surprise." At Clara's signal, the auditorium lights went out, and on the ceiling, small LED lights began to shine, simulating a starry sky. Regina, who had helped organize the surprise, handed each person present a small biodegradable paper lantern, the kind that can float when lit. "Let's all go to the garden," Clara invited. The auditorium gradually emptied, with hundreds of people heading to the Institute's spacious garden, where larger lanterns were already prepared. In the center of the space, Clara, Augustus, and Victoria positioned themselves together. The girl took both their hands and joined them between her own. "Dad taught me that when someone we love leaves, we don't totally lose that person. Love changes form, like water turning into a cloud, but it continues to exist." Victoria felt her throat tighten with the child's wisdom. Augustus, beside her, tried to maintain his composure, but his eyes shone intensely under the true stars that now revealed themselves in the night sky. "And Aunt Victoria taught me that sometimes we need to get lost to truly find ourselves," Clara continued. "Like when a plane enters a storm, but the pilot knows that on the other side, the sun shines again." A team of volunteers began distributing the lanterns, and soon the garden was filled with small flickering lights, creating a magical spectacle against the dark sky. "Let's release our lanterns together," Regina instructed, "in memory of those we love and lost, but also in celebration of the new connections we've formed and the lives we've rebuilt." Augustus lit his lantern, thinking of Livia. Victoria lit hers, remembering her father. Clara held a third lantern, representing not loss, but hope, the future they were building together. Gradually, hundreds of lanterns rose into the air, creating a luminous dance above the city. It was a moment of transcendent beauty, where pain and joy, past and future, intertwined in harmony. Victoria, watching the spectacle, felt something touch her free hand. It was Augustus, discreetly offering the Silver Wings keychain. "I think it belongs to both of us now," he said softly. She accepted the small object, understanding its deeper meaning. It was not just a reminder of loss, but a symbol of transformation, both his and hers. "Thank you," Victoria whispered, "for showing me that it's always possible to start over." Augustus smiled, his gaze meeting hers under the lantern-lit sky. "And thank you for helping me fulfill the promise I made to Livia, to transform our pain into the beginning of hope for others." Clara, between them, squeezed both their hands. "We're a good team, aren't we?" Victoria knelt to be at the girl's height. "The best team, little Clara, as your grandfather would have said, the best crew." In that moment, under the real stars and the hundreds of lanterns that mimicked earthly stars, something was completed for Victoria Miller. The Ice Queen had completely dissolved, giving way to a woman who finally understood her father's most important lesson. True strength lies not in subjugating others, but in elevating them, and by elevating others she herself had been elevated. 6 months later, the Wings Foundation was internationally recognized as an innovative model of social responsibility. Horizon Enterprises, under Victoria's transformed leadership, was voted one of the best companies to work for in the country. The humanized management model she implemented had become a case study in business schools worldwide. But for Victoria, the true victory lay in the simple moments, in Sunday afternoons helping Clara with science projects, in sincere conversations with Augustus about the Foundation's challenges and joys, in the peace she had finally found within herself. The Silver Wings keychain was no longer kept in a drawer. It now occupied a place of honor on her office desk, beside a photo of her father and a drawing made by Clara. 3 figures holding hands under a starry sky, with the caption written in child's handwriting. Family isn't just those born together, it's those who choose to fly together.